Hello and welcome to Tell the People, a program about our Catholic faith with news and information in and around the Catholic Diocese of Lafayette. I'm Theresa Lectures, and in today's show, we will have an interview with newly ordained priest, Father Travis Wayne Abadie. Father Michael Russo is here in this segment, What It Means to Be Catholic, talking about loving what is small. And in the segment, a conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell, Monsignor Richard Green interviews Bishop Jarrell about Pope Francis ordaining 19 priests in Rome. But first, Catholic news on this June 14th weekend. Attention all Catholic young men ages 15 to 25. Do you know where your life is going? The Lord Jesus has a specific plan for your life. A particular path to be and to do something great for His kingdom. Come discover what it is at the annual Quo Vadis Days camp. Quo Vadis is a Latin expression meaning, where are you going? At Quo Vadis Days, you will spend time with other young men your age serious about hearing the Lord's voice in their lives and following Him. These are blessed days of prayer, fun, and fraternity. You will learn to pray better and make great friends. Quo Vadis Days is led by priests and seminarians of the Diocese of Lafayette and is sponsored by the Diocesan Office of Vocations. Quo Vadis Days will be held from Tuesday, June 23rd to Thursday, June 25th at Our Lady of Sorrows Retreat Center, 103 Railroad Avenue in St. Martinville. There is no cost to attend the camp. Ask your parish priest for registration information or contact Father Kevin Bordelon at the Office of Vocations at perbordelon@gmail.com or call 261-5690. You can download registration forms at www.lafayettevocations.org. Our Lady of the Oaks Retreat House, located at 214 Church Street in Grand Coteau, is having a day of reflection highlighting 12-step spirituality and Judeo-Christian tradition. Practicing the 12-step principles in our daily lives will be held on Tuesday, June 23rd from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the presenter is Renee Hilton Taylor. Pre-registration is required and the cost is $25. To print out a registration form, go online to www.ourladyoftheoaks.com, click Retreats, and then look for and click for reservation form. Please mail your registration form in. The deadline is June 20th. The Lafayette Diocese Office of Vocations will sponsor a Vocations Supper for young women on Thursday, June 25th at Immaculata Center, located at 1408 Carmel Drive in Lafayette. The gathering is scheduled to begin at 6:30 p.m. It is customary for a sponsoring pastor, deacon, or religious to accompany one or two candidates to the dinner. If the young person is under the age of 18 and is the only candidate being sponsored, a parent or other family member over the age of 18 must also attend the Vocations Supper. Space is limited for this event and early registration is required. Please contact the Office of Vocations at 261-5690 for further details. You are invited to a Theresian birthday bash. To be celebrated will be the 500th birthday of Saint Theresa of Avila, and the Community of Jesus Crucified continues the occasion with a series of lectures honoring Saint Theresa of Avila. The last lecture on June 26, Fridays at 7 p.m., will be about other writings of Saint Theresa of Avila. The lectures will be led by Father Michael Champagne at Our Lady of Sorrows Retreat Center, located at 103 Railroad Avenue in St. Martinville. There is no cost for the lectures, so for more information and to register, call 337-394-6550. Also, in observance of the Year of Consecrated Life, everyone is invited to an open house at Our Lady of Sorrows Retreat Center and the Community of Jesus Crucified, located at 103 Railroad Avenue in St. Martinville. One Sunday a month is set aside for you to come and get a close-up view of the consecrated life and gain a plenary indulgence. The gate and chapel will open from 8:30 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. Pray with the community. Midday prayer at 11:45, Mass at noon, and evening prayer at 6:15 p.m. The next Community of Jesus Crucified open house is scheduled for Sunday, June 28th. For more information, call 394-6550. Please mark your calendars for the 2015 Catholic Charismatic Renewal Conference to be held on Friday, July 24th through Sunday, July 26th in the Ramada Conference Center, located at 2032 Northeast Evangeline Thruway in Lafayette. This year's conference theme is Gather Us Together, Lord, Make Us One. We'll be featuring Father Bill Halbing of New Jersey and Bishop Sam Jacobs. For further details, please contact the Catholic Charismatic Renewal Office at 337-265-3773. And that's Catholic news for this week. Coming up next, we will have an interview with newly ordained priest, Father Travis Wayne Abity. Father Abity, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Father Abity, could you please tell us about your parents, where you were born, where you went to school?
Sure. So my original home was Sunset. I went to school at St. Ignatius there, right next to St. Charles Borromeo, a bit of a Jesuit influence. But growing up, we moved all over the place. So I found myself in Carrico Catholic for a time. That's where I received my first communion, and all the way down in Abbeville when I went to Mount Carmel, and eventually found my way to Edgar Martin, so a couple years of public school there. And when high school came around, we had a transfer over to Houston, so I went to high school in Katy, Texas.
I see. So what about your college and seminary life?
So I'm very proud to say I went to one of the best, perhaps the best university in the world, Texas A&M. So my dad was interesting. He's a Tiger, so that was an interesting choice for us. A family somewhat divided, but a lot of fun. Went 2 years at Texas A&M, and then went 2 years at St. Joseph's Seminary College, where I received my degree. Then 2 years at Assumption Seminary in San Antonio, and finished up at Notre Dame in New Orleans.
Well, you've been a traveler
I don't like to say I don't have any roots. My roots are very spread out. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, tell me, how did you discern your vocation, and at what age?
Well, discernment, I like to say, is kind of like falling in love. You know, I think that process begins in falling in love with God and with His church, but in a more explicit way, I would say I was discerning in my senior year of high school over there in Katy. So when I began, I was discerning for the Diocese of Galveston-Houston. Their policy at the time was not to receive anybody straight out of high school. That was their policy for the seminary. And so while I was at Texas A&M, still in that process of active discernment, outstanding place, by the way, to discern a vocation, when I left Texas A&M, there were 13 other people leaving that 1 year for vocations. So it's a beautiful campus for that. But in that process, it really was made very clear to me that Lafayette is home. And so I came home, and so grateful to Father Aaron Melanson, the Vocations Director at the time, for receiving me, and also Father Harold Trahan, the pastor at St. Elizabeth Seton, for welcoming me home. They did a fantastic job of that, and I'm indebted to them.
Well, who inspired you for Vocations?
You know, I would say ultimately it was my mother who inspired me, kind of in a perhaps indirect way, but in the most profound way. My mother at the time growing up wasn't even Catholic or even particularly religious, but she never failed to sacrifice for her children, and priesthood can't be understood without sacrifice. And so I have to say, if I could pick out any person here on earth who inspired me, I have to say it was my mother.
And in conversation, you said she did become Catholic?
She did.
How
she
interesting.
Did. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful story. My family is just riddled with beautiful stories like that. It's been a graced period, without a doubt.
Well, what have been some of your diocesan assignments so far?
So I've just completed a wonderful year at St. Peter's in New Iberia with Father Blanda. Before that was, again, another wonderful assignment at the Cathedral, St. John the Evangelist, another beautiful community there. And before that, back in New Iberia, Our Lady Perpetual Help with Father Mark Therese. Whenever I was assigned there, I was just coming out of a year of leave, and so we like to joke that Father Therese was in charge of setting my head back on straight. So that was my second time with him and in that community. All beautiful assignments, of course.
Well, I guess on that note, then, who have you chosen to vest you for your who did you choose to vest you for your ordination?
Yeah, and it's Father Mark Therese. I have so many friends in this presbyterate, this community of priests. So he vested me, and just as a sign of our friendship, which means so much to me. So grateful to him. Yeah.
And your choice for bringing up the gifts?
I went with the classic decision of my parents will bring up the gifts, Mom and Dad, and so I think they did a fine job.
So tell us about the chalice and the paten, and how did you choose it?
So as I was saying, I think I don't know if I'm greedy or particularly graced, but I'm receiving two chalices. One, such a beautiful gift was the chalice of Father Jean Lafleur, who was the founding pastor at St. Elizabeth Seton. He gave the chalice, he willed the chalice to the parish, and that chalice was then promised to the first vocation from that parish. So it's a beautiful chalice with a more beautiful and storied history. I'm so humbled to receive it. The other one is that my parents decided to go ahead and also provide me with a chalice. Another beautiful story there. My mom lived for a time in Poland, and this chalice is made in Poland with images of the Holy Family. So also a very significant and beautiful gift to carry with me into priesthood.
Well, Father, your first assignment is where?
It's in Eunice. Looking forward to moving in there, and no doubt another beautiful community here in the Diocese of Lafayette.
Well, your journey's been beautiful, and it's
has.
been far and wide, and I know God's going to take you to some great places.
Can't wait.
We're so blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Father Michael Russo is here in this segment, What It Means to Be Catholic, talking about loving what is small.
Hello, I'm Father Michael Russo, the pastor of Our Lady of Fatima Church here in Lafayette. Jesus' familiar parable of the mustard seed contains some of the most beautiful lessons in the spiritual life. The first is that something so small can become so great. Jesus told this parable to his first followers. They were not the rich and mighty, they were the peasants, hard workers, heavily taxed, poor and often hungry, at the bottom of the economic ladder. And so do you see what Jesus is doing? He's giving hope, teaching the worth and dignity of the lowly and the small. And yet, who in the world wants to be small? Don't we want others to pay attention, to take notice? So we build huge homes and buy fancy cars and cling to our bank accounts. We may even starve ourselves because it's all about the look. But our Jesus teaches that such things have absolutely nothing to do with self-worth or greatness, for he knows that even the great thing owes its existence to a small thing. No matter how small it looks to others, even the mustard seed has dignity and value in God's eyes. This is why the church will always defend the life of the unborn, the smallest of all, because God treasures the things that are small. We give our littleness to him, and he turns it into something great. Who would ever have imagined the successes of Mother Angelica, who started with only $200 and a handful of sisters, and who readily says that the only thing she knew about television was how to turn it on and off. So the parable of the mustard seed reminds us that from the tiniest seed, great growth can come. But we must have the patience which has to learn to wait on God. And here's the second lesson of the gospel. Not just that something small becomes big, but that it all takes place over time. We plant the seed, and at first nothing seems to happen, but gradually the seed sprouts and produces. And so it is with the spiritual life. It does not work by leaps and bounds, but by baby steps. This is often hard to understand in our culture of instant gratification and automatic banking and 24-hour convenience stores. It's why people can so easily give up. They may try to rid themselves of a particular habit of sin. They pray and pray, but nothing seems to change for them, and so they just give up. Yet progress in the spiritual life unfolds only little by little. It's like a baby learning to walk. The baby takes 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, and falls. Then it picks itself back up, walking forward, falling back, steps forward, steps back. But each time the baby picks itself up from the fall, it's closer to its mom. Yes, it takes time to get to her, and along the way there are plenty of falls and mishaps. But if the baby keeps getting back up, that baby eventually reaches the destination. And so too in the spiritual life, growth comes only over time. We may struggle and struggle with a bad habit of sin, but we need never get discouraged, because it's better to be a cripple limping on our way to God than to be a champion athlete on the wrong track. Why does God not take my destructive behavior away from me? I beg and try and try. Well, because maybe he knows that without the struggle, I would become too prideful, and pride is the worst sin of all. It was the sin of Lucifer. We're back to not wanting to be small. Speaking personally, I know in my own life as a priest that there is a great danger in becoming overly satisfied. I can never say, now I've got it all figured out, done, mission accomplished. No, Scripture says something very different, that we must work out our salvation with fear and trembling. I do not believe in putting down other religions, but I cannot help but notice that this is very different from Protestant religions, which so readily claim, I know I've been saved. We have to be careful about this, because my Bible says about salvation, work it out with fear and trembling. We may wonder why God does not give us the gifts we need right at the beginning of our vocation. And the reason is probably because if we knew then what we knew or know now, we wouldn't be able to handle it. We need those valuable lessons that come from experience in order to take on the task of today. So do you get the lesson? It's little by little, baby step by baby step, not by leaps and bounds or instant achievement. Haven't we all heard it said of some people, they got to the top too fast, and what happened? It ended up destroying them. They couldn't handle it, because it came too quickly without the trials and errors that come from experience that teach us. And so, my Lord, help me to heed the lesson of the mustard seed. Everything must have a beginning. Nothing emerges fully grown, not even your kingdom. You could establish it in an instant, but you choose to conquer one person at a time, working quietly, mysteriously in each person's heart, one by one, little by little. And so I have to be committed for the long haul. If my prayer does not produce fireworks right away, if my bad habits do not go away in the snap of a finger, if I fail to understand the whole of Catholic doctrine after a weekend seminar, I cannot give up and walk away, for only with constant patient effort and an unshakable confidence in the Lord will I make progress, for he loves what is small and lowly in the world. And so teach me, Lord, to be small. Yes, I may be a cripple, failing miserably and failing 1,000 times, but it's better to be a cripple limping on my way to you, Lord, than to be a champion athlete on the wrong track. To my Catholic brothers and sisters, make a good confession soon. Be sure to be at Mass this Sunday, and until next time, God love you.
Thank you, Father Russo. Coming up next in the segment, a conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell, Monsignor Richard Green interviews Bishop Jarrell about Pope Francis ordaining 19 priests in Rome.
Good morning, and thank you for having us in your home for another conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell of the Diocese of Lafayette. Bishop, thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
On April the 26th, Pope Francis ordained 19 priests in Rome. As usual, his homily drew some comment. And so, Bishop, what did the Holy Father have to say?
Well, the Holy Father basically used the homily that is printed in the ritual. This is the bishop's choice, of course. He may use the homily that is in the ritual, or he may construct his own homily. However, the Holy Father interjected some of his own comments while he was using the printed homily.
And for example?
Well, he told the new priests at one point, "May your homilies not be boring. May they touch the hearts of people because they come from your heart." So I think that was a good advice to them. And he also told them to give good example by their lives because, he said, words without examples are empty.
Well, those are certainly words of good advice. The topic of homilies is interesting. What do you think of priest homilies in the diocese?
Yes. Well, priests vary in their competence in many areas, including homilies. Even an individual priest may give an excellent homily one week and then perhaps the next week not as good. So they vary from week to week. And priests are always giving attention to this task of theirs. I know our young priests are trained extensively in giving homilies, and they're always encouraged to improve. But I think we have to remember that priests are called upon to give a lot of homilies. And the strain of constantly being creative sometimes shows on priests. So it's quite a challenge to be always excellent. I have to say, too, that I seldom hear our priests preach, because whenever I attend, usually I'm the one who is the homilist. Not always, sometimes as a guest homilist, but usually I'm the one preaching. However, I do speak to a lot of people, and they tell me about priests who are excellent homilists, and they're very praiseworthy. But I also hear the other side about some priests who are not good homilists. So I hear both things. But I think it's important, too, that lay people learn how to listen to a homily. Certainly there are some homilies that are not excellent and not very challenging to the people or not very interesting to listen to. But if the listener has the attitude, I'm going to find some words or some phrases or some sentence on which I can reflect. In other words, a more type of active listening, not just sitting back and saying, well, go ahead, entertain me, but what can I hear there that I can reflect on? I think sometimes that this is a good exercise for lay people to have, and a good way of getting something positive from every homily. I'm sure every homily has something in it to which people can attend and which can be a source of further reflection on their part. So I would challenge the lay people to become good listeners of homilies.
Okay. Well, Bishop, so much for homilies. What else did Pope Francis tell the new priests?
He told them also, do not celebrate Mass in haste. Now, this is a temptation that comes, especially after a priest has been celebrating Mass for years, day in and day out, week in and week out. The temptation is might come to rush through it. And I have to say that at times I have succumbed to that temptation. So the Holy Father was cautioning the young priests, the new priests, not to be hasty in the celebration of Mass, but to give it to proper attention. He also talked about baptism. He said, baptism should never be refused to a person who asks for it.
Mm-hmm. So, Bishop, what do you think Pope Francis meant by that statement?
Well, I think if the person is an adult, he meant that you can work with that person and find some kernel of faith, even though his life is not perfect. And you can certainly proceed with the baptism. For infants, however, it's a little bit different. There are some requirements. You have to have someone who will agree to give the child a Catholic upbringing. That is a requirement. So pastors have to discuss that with parents. Who is going to give the child the Catholic upbringing? Could be the parent, could be a grandparent. Someone has to see to that child's education in the faith and his practice of the faith. And the second thing that is required is a sponsor who is confirmed and who is a practicing Catholic. And in our world, which is becoming more secular, some parents have that kernel of faith. They want to have their infant child baptized, but they tell pastors they don't know anyone who's a practicing Catholic. So that can be a challenge. Sometimes the pastor or the parish can provide a sponsor.
And Bishop, I believe Pope Francis said something about the sacrament of penance or reconciliation.
Well, he did. He told the new priest, never tire of being merciful. You are in the confessional to forgive, not to condemn. And I think that's a very good lesson, and I think our priests are trained in that spirit today.
And the Holy Father had something about special noteworthy phrases. Did he have any this time?
Well, it's very common for him to say something in a unique way, and he said to them, it is unseemly when a priest lives for his own pleasure and struts like a peacock.
Well, that statement certainly does not need any explanation. As usual, the Holy Father treats serious matters in a way that gets people's attention. May the Lord continue to bless him and his ministry, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Bishop Jarrell and Monsignor Green. Join us next week for another conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell for What It Means to Be Catholic with Father Michael Russo, and we will have an interview with newly ordained priest Father Charles William Massey IV. We hope you have enjoyed our program because it is produced for you. So please join us next week on this station as we tell the people about the Diocese of Lafayette and the good news of our Catholic faith.